This video will be censored. However, if you would like to see this video uncensored, then please check out my Patreon link in the description or type in patreon.com/Sydsnap. 大家好, it's your girl! And I have been trying to record this video a million goddamn times, okay? I initially tried recording it in England right when I arrived at our English home because I finished a script that I wanted to, and after a while I realized my equipment wasn't working, so a lot of that, what I was working on and doing, it just wasn't working. Just a lot of it, just an hour's worth of work gone. So then I tried hiring out a recording studio in London to try and see if I could record it there. But the recording studio was not the best. It was kind of loud, and just in general, the footage was not usable. It wasn't up to what I would want to post. So I scrapped that. That's great. And then it just got so frustrating to a point that I just thought, I'm just gonna do this when I'm back in Japan, because if I go through this one more fucking time, I'm going to kill. I'm just gonna work harder and make sure I do it better in Japan. So here I am, ready to finally talk to you guys about culture. Now, a few months ago, I did a video talking about some of the top 10 hentai MILF titles on a certain website. And a lot of you guys liked it, and I like doing it, okay? I like going in, putting my little fingies in the grass, going into the mud, eating that mud, and absorbing information. Because that's what people do. That's where we got knowledge. And I decided to keep going on that little ride there and talk about a new tag. And this tag that I chose for this video is, of course, as you probably guessed, NTR. One of my all-time favorite tags that the research into this was tangibly delectable, I promise. Now, if you do not know what NTR is, it is short for netorare, which is kind of like, how do I describe NTR to you? Essentially, there is a partner and a cheating partner, and the partner is involved and then catches their cheating partner cheating, and, you know, is usually kind of forced to watch them and cries, or, you know, is kind of like, they don't know that their partner's cheating, and their partner's like having sex near them, be it like, you know, secretly in another room where they're sitting over here in the other room, or be it on a phone. So I decided I'm gonna look at the top 10 hentai that is available on a certain website that has the NTR tag. However, 3 of those titles actually I talked about on the tag videos, so I'm actually just going to talk about the 3 after that. So when I say top 10, I actually kind of mean like top 13, but it is only 10 titles. I'm just going a little further beyond. Now, before I start discussing all of these titles with you, I do want to clarify one thing. Some of the titles I didn't really think suited the NTR tag, and I think a lot of you guys would probably argue with me. So I want to say straight up front what NTR is to me, my definition of it. NTR to me is essentially, it's involving your partner, involving a, you know, non-cheating partner, and the cheating partner is doing it near them, be it with them knowing or not knowing, or being forced to watch while crying. Now that's NTR to me with a dash of cuckoldery. I know to some, NTR just automatically equals cheating, but cheating has its own tag, and it's a little, like, I think we can all agree that NTR is cheating, but a step further than that. So instead of yammering on about it, let's fucking begin this goddamn baby show. Now the first title that appears when you look at the top NTR tags is called Seiso Kanojo Ochiru 2, or The Pure Girlfriend's Fall 2. Now, I was surprised because this is the first time that the second chapter was actually the most recommended out of the entire series. And I didn't want to just start with the second chapter without, you know, knowing the whole plot line. It didn't seem like an anthology, of course, so I started actually with the first one. And I can tell you right now, from the title alone, right from the get-go, the main girl, she's not very say-so. Now, the story begins with an average girl named Tsukumi, who is the class president. And she starts to date another boy in her class called Takagi. To Takagi, Tsukumi is a reserved and dignified lady who he's just even too nervous to try and even hold hands with because she seems so pure. And because of that, they've not even, held hands even though they've been together for 6 months. So one day at school, a delinquent-looking guy, and from this point on, I think you guys can guess where this is going, named Kirishima comes up to Tsukumi and says, "Hey, I saw you having a date with Takagi, and you're the class president, but it is against school rules to date. So if I show the picture that I took of you with that guy on a date, you guys are going to be suspended, but probably worse is going to happen to Takagi because his grades suck, and he might just even get expelled." So Tsukimi's like freaking out, like, "Shit, what do you want me to do?" And he's like, "Oh, just for one day, pretend to be my girlfriend." So Tsukimi agrees because she doesn't want anything bad to happen to her boyfriend by being shown the picture to the principal. And Kirishima takes her to a hotel, they kiss, they bump coochies, and Tsukimi's like, oh shit, hey, that's kind of nice. She was inexperienced, but then was like, okay, yeah, loving this. And she kind of keeps doing it with Kirishima. So even though Kirishima is constantly kind of blackmailing her, she acts like she doesn't like it, but she really does love it, even though she feels incredibly guilty. So she tells herself it's because of the blackmailing, but really she just likes it, just to kind of overcome the guilt. Now, it was good I got that whole setup, but I could definitely see why the first chapter was not nearly as popular as the second. Considering there is like no NTR in the first chapter, there's just cheating. Like, we barely see Takagi at all. It's literally just Tsukimi plowing Kirishima. We do get little like small glimpses, and even one time while they were out, Takagi saw her with Kirishima, but you know, nothing really, he didn't know it was her. But yeah, they weren't, that was just not NTR. But chapter 2! Chapter 2 is as NTR as it gets, baby, okay? The second chapter begins with Tsukimi and Takagi on a date. But hark! Suddenly Tsukimi gets a text. I wonder who from. It couldn't be Kirishima, could it? Of course it is. He just wanted to say hello. No, he said get your ass to the nearest bathroom where you're having a date so we can plow with Takagi standing outside. And they did. They did do that. They did. I saw it. And then throughout the whole day, as Tsukimi and Takagi are going on a date, Kirishima keeps texting her like, I'm going to follow you to every place you guys are going, and we're going to bang everywhere you can go. All the while on the outside, Tsukimi and Takagi are on a very innocent date. Then suddenly, without Takagi knowing, it's not so innocent. You know, he doesn't know though. They're sharing ice cream, holding hands, smiling, while all the while, Tsukimi keeps going to the bathroom and getting down to Coochie Town with Kirishima. Compared to the first chapter, this one is a rather longer one because it is just an all-day thing. They just keep going to different places on their dates, and then she just keeps going to the bathroom, and then she just plows Kirishima. Just all day. All day. And then later on another day, Tsukimi gets a little sick. But then we find out when Takagi tries going to Tsukimi's house to give her his homework, she actually ends up having sex with Kirishima in front of him, but Kirishima's hidden, and you know, she can't see that while Tsukimi's talking to him, she's actually just getting plowed. And then, yeah, you know, that sounds to me like NTR. And it kind of keeps going like that until Tsukimi's just like, yo, this guilt, it's eating at me, this needs to stop. And Kirishima's like, damn, okay, fine, f off, I have another bitch anyway. So Kirishima and Tsukimi finally stop doing stuff together, and Tsukimi decides to just keep going with her relationship with Takagi, and they eventually do end up having sex. But then she finds out, Takagi doesn't really satisfy me that well. He's not very sexually good for me. So then she's like, okay, guess I'm just gonna go back and cheat on Takagi with Kirishima. And that was the whole story. That was the story. And one of the things I can appreciate about it is we get a full-length story. We don't just get a simple NTR and go without really knowing the details behind it. We get the whole shebang bang. We get to see Tsukimi literally not just change from being inexperienced to sexually fulfilled, but also see her personality change to become more corrupt from the guilt as well. One of the hardest parts to read, and even one of the parts that made me feel start crying a little bit, was near the end of the second chapter when she decides to go back to Kirishima because she's not actually fulfilled. And while she's doing it with Kirishima, we keep seeing the happiest, love-filled memories that she has with Takagi. And, you know, but while also being plowed by Kirishima, and she begins crying because she feels such intense guilt. We get to see her while she's thinking about how she fell in love with this other guy while having sex with another guy, and it is heart-wrenching, especially because we know the cycle will keep repeating. She will keep being eaten alive by her guilt and being so much in tremendous pain, but she just keeps letting her cooch do the thinking here. Now with NTR, one of the reasons people tend to like it so much is because of how aggressive it is. Aggressive being the sexual stuff. And this one is incredibly aggressive. And we see that a million times over because they plow like a million fucking times. Now there's a lot of emphasis on the drawings by how obese her cooch is and how into the act she is, even though she's feeling incredibly guilty. You know, can add a little bit more spice to the scenes that some people might enjoy. Now there isn't anything of Takagi crying or even finding out about their partner cheating, which is, it's okay. Can't all have everything. Would have been nice if he cried a little bit. Can't have everything. And the nipples in the drawings are drawn really long, which was actually kind of like unusual to me. I know it's probably the idea that maybe they kind of grab it so much that it kind of, extends out. But, that's just like a weird thought to me personally. But her ass is so fucking perky that it is just delectable. And genuinely, the art does exactly what it needs to do. It completely shows how aggressive the sex is. It shows how into it but guilty she feels. It depicts everything it needs to and more. And I can definitely see why this is a favorite and deserves to be where it is. Next is a title called Teiso Canon Zero. And it starts as a rather long anthology of various men doing it with a bunch of various women that are often extremely vulgar. And after the first few chapters of seeing this, we actually get to find out that the vulgar women that are being shown doing it with these various men actually are all part of one family. There's 4 women shown in total, 3 sisters and 1 mother. Now after we see the various chapters of the women and then find out afterwards that they're actually all a family, we get to learn more about their family dynamic. We find out that the mother constantly brings home a lot of different men to fornicate with. Sometimes together with her daughters, which admittedly those chapters were not my favorite. Okay, it was incredibly uncomfortable. It just really weirded me out because even when there wasn't a man around, she would still grab her daughters very vulgarly and inappropriately. And quite often, all 4 of them often share one guy at once, which I think it can be done tastefully, which is so awful to say. But sometimes in this hentai, it comes off a bit obnoxious to me. It's a bit too much. It's constantly them waiting around for their turn and then they just act over the top about it. And I know I'm not the target audience here, okay? But listen, for example, the youngest sister Kurumi brings home a male classmate that she wants to introduce to her family. And that's because she lied to her family saying she had a boyfriend when she didn't. And right when the male classmate walks through that door, the 2 other sisters and the mother are right, gates open, let's start plowing this guy. And at that moment, I think, is when the actual NTR happens. Because Kurumi is okay, I'll let you plow this guy, but I want to have them first. And then during the act, she says, actually, I've had a crush on you for a long time. Please, can you be my boyfriend? And instead of being oh, yeah, sure, or whatever, and, having a kiss, usually you'd see in a manga, he's actually, I kind of just want to plow your mom next after we're done. So, bruh. And then in the end, when they do finish, he actually does go ahead and bang her fucking mom in front of her. Now, there's a lot worse of things that can be said to you other than no. Now, there's some chapters in this anthology manga that are not just about the family. There are just some random various chapters of other things. Ooh, a delivery man with a horny wife at home. Or a classroom that at the end of all the day, all of them just have an orgy together. But in the end, there wasn't much NTR. Yes, I think all of the women that were featured in the anthology, besides the sisters, were married and had husbands, but they only kind of bring that up once, and we don't see the husbands. They're nowhere near the vicinity of where this is happening, so it's kind of just cheating. I mean, there was one chapter where a guy was hidden in a locker, and he was watching the girl he loves getting, having sex with a bunch of different people, and he, he was forced to watch it and he was crying, but he really enjoyed watching it though. So I don't really count that. It's more of a situation, definitely mostly an adultery tag here. And even though there was only one artist, some of the art in the chapters looked way different from one another. So much so that it was almost kind of jarring. Now, most of the art was immaculate, especially when it came to how unhinged and obsessed the girls were. But some of the art, not a lot of it by any means, just some, was giving early 2000s deviant art. Now to end it, I don't think this necessarily does fit the NTR tag, but it does work because there is some small forms of it. This definitely wasn't my favorite, but if you are looking for a woman who is down to anywhere, any point, no matter who you're with, and if you just really love kind of annoying pests who constantly need gangs, even sometimes involving their family members, you are gonna love this one, my guy. On to the next one. This one is called, okay, I'm gonna look at the title for this because it's very, very long. Yan Mama Oba-san no Miwaku no Karada 2. Dakara boku wa hitozuma sex o yamararenai. I'm just gonna call it Yan Mama 2. And this is also the second chapter that is higher rated than the first one. So just just like in Say So Kanajo, I started with reading the first chapter. Story is essentially a guy named Kazu cause his and his friends come over to his house to hang out, and his friends find out that Kazu's mom is essentially a MILF. She used to be a Yankee, aka a delinquent, and kind of gives off a scary impression, but is very sexy. But more importantly, has massive tits. The boys play a random video game, and for some whatever goddamn reason, Kazu's like, hey, whoever loses at this game has to go and confess to my mom. And they're like, and the boys are, this is a normal game. That's a really normal punishment if you lose a game. Sure. So one of the friends ends up losing, and his name is Hiroki, and he decides to go and confess to Kazu's mom. All the while Kazu's friend is watching. I don't know where Kazu goes, but, you know, probably good he wasn't there considering what's about to happen. Hiroki confesses by essentially saying, I like you, please let me touch your tits. Kazu's mom's just like, okay, and then it gets pretty, I think we all know where it goes from there. So they fornicate and they form this kind of relationship, and afterwards Hiroki keeps going over to Kazu's house to chill, but he's not actually doing much chilling. He'll say like, oh, I need to use the bathroom, but you know, Kazu's mom will be in there and they'll just have in the bathroom by her son. And moving on from that, the second chapter isn't actually all that much different from the first. There's one part where Hiroki and Kazu go to visit Kazu's mom at work, and then Hiroki's like, okay, you're working behind a counter. Let me bang you secretly behind the counter. He's banging Kazu's mom in front of Kazu without Kazu knowing or seeing, even though it's just behind a counter. I don't really know what's the logic in that. So I guess that kind of like is NTR, even though it is just kind of like her son. She does mention she is married, but once again, we don't see the husband really. She doesn't bring it up much, and all we just know is that she's married. So it doesn't really fit the NTR category for me. It's more for guys who like to jack off listening to Stacy's mom while imagining Bakugo's mom. So, Jesus, that was kind of oddly specific. Shit. I think I've been going on My Hero Academia TikTok a little too much lately. It's such an awful place. Now, the art was very roughly drawn, and not in a very sensual sense. The lighting wasn't very cleaned up, and sometimes, like, the boy's face would be really wonky looking. Like, from the distance, it looks like it's drawn really, really well, but then when you look closely, you can see a lot of smaller details that don't really fit, and it could take you out of it. However, the scenes were very beautifully done. They were cleaned up, and they were shaded beautifully, wonderful. But, you know, let's be honest, we're kind of here for just kind of that, really. And the details on the breasts, which, you know, of course, were one of the main features of why, you know, the boys liked her, were very nicely done. Tickety-boo, but it definitely wasn't the cleanest work by any means and wasn't my favorite. Do I think it deserves to be in the NTR tag? Not really, but I do think if you kind of count the sun bit, I guess. But to me, again, it's more of adultery / cheating. The next title is Dropout. Now, I'm gonna be biased because I remember reading this one ages ago and liking it, but I initially didn't remember why I didn't really finish it, and I just kind of dropped Dropout. And I definitely didn't remember if there was any NTR in it. Also, remembering this one actually kind of hurts me because when I first met Shindo L, I said, oh, I really love your hentai Dropout. And he's like, oh, I didn't make that. And yeah, I kind of screwed up on that one. So the story in Dropout takes place in a world where essentially if you do not go to university, you are labeled as a dropout and are subjected to menial labor. Our main female lead, Shichijo, was a remarkable student with an anticipated, beautiful, shining future. However, Shichijo one day decides to just not go to university. She's not gonna do it. She still attends school, but is labeled as a dropout. She is used as a reward, or another name that is given to them, dumpsters, for the top male students to use and abuse as much as they please. She is assigned to another straight A student called Nimi-kun. Now, Nimi-kun has had a massive crush on Shichijo for ages, but to Shichijo, she just does the acts for Nimi-kun, just kind of out of duty. So although Nimi-kun wants something more from Shichijo, and although she's providing her dumpster duties, Shichijo's just, it's kind of like, it's what I'm here for, dude. I don't really know what more you want from me. And she is more than proud to do them. Now for the NTR aspect, and Jesus, is it something, okay. So in that, there's another male character called Shiroshima, who is very much in love with our main female lead, Shichijo. But Shichijo is, of course, assigned to Nima-kun and there to fulfill Nima-kun's desires, which, of course, really hurts Shiroshima. Now, Shiroshima actually used to bully Nima-kun. And he kind of wanted to bully him now to make him let loose Shichijo. So he starts beating the shit out of Nima-kun. However, Shichijo walks by and sees Shiroshima beating the shit out of Nima-kun and doesn't like that. So she ends up beating the shit out of Shiroshima. And while he's down, just completely obliterated from being beat the hell up, she decides to let Nima-kun take her virginity right in front of Shiroshima. Nima's describing how good it is. Shichijo is just loving the shit of it. And Shiroshima is just on the ground, crying, feeling sick. It is top tier NTR. I love feeling sick to my stomach during I love it. Fictional characters' pain is my heart and soul. It is my bread and butter. After that, we begin to see Nima-kun start to change from being a pure, innocent, and shy soul to being quite a sadistic son of a bitch. Because he begins to realize that Shichijo fully belongs to him. She is all his all the time. Like, he makes her walk on all fours around the school with a collar and leash on, and he begins to let other male students do stuff with her in front of him. And, you know, she loves it the whole time, but, you know, he's watching the whole time. He also loves it, so that's not really NTR, but, you know, it's a whole thing. And it kind of ends at that. There are other chapters in the Dropout book. The book is actually quite long. And I remember after I finished reading Dropout, I couldn't remember much of the other stories, and that's why I dropped it. And then I read it again, and I realized why I stopped reading after that. So the chapter after Dropout finished was about a team of women going to a facility used for breeding human women. And they breeded them with fictional monsters. But the women who came to try and save the other women who are being breeded by the monsters got captured and then were also taken to be breeded in that facility. Now, the monsters are like ogres and such, but also they're like crocodile reptilians. We got werewolves. And honestly, I cannot. I will not. Another chapter had like a bison person. There's one like alien thing that goes into a woman's nose and then goes to her brain to make her like constantly horny, but like the tentacles are going out of every crevice out of her, so it's like going out of her nose, going out of her ears, all the time during the whole fucking thing. This manga is definitely for those who have a breeding fetish, but also kind of like it with like monster people that that look a lot like animals, and I'm not a fan of that. And listen, I don't need a hentai to be completely NTR for it to suit the NTR tag and, you know, admit that it suits it. But I can't say I quite liked Dropout as much as I recalled, because I think after reading the other chapters and stuff like that, it was just too much. I cannot stress, I hate monster people. I hate, like, especially, I don't like animal looking things. And there is a lot of humanoid animal stuff going on in it. A lot. Dropout was good, but that was such a, I didn't know this until I reread it, such a small portion of the book. And I just, you know what, it does suit the NTR aspect. It had that one small thing, but I would just kind of personally just leave it at that. Just leaving it there. Now, the next title is called 10年後の8月君と. And this one is a long one. You're gonna have to sit down, get a banky on, put on some nice tea, sip it, drink it, and just settle in for a whole goddamn night, because you're gonna need it for this one. That's like dramatic. It's not that long. It's long, but not that long. Now, the story begins about a guy named Junpei that when he was a child and was just about to move out of the town he was living in, makes a promise to his childhood girlfriend named Saya that 10 years from then, they are going to get married and they're going to just stay together until then and just stay loyal. So he moves away, and 10 years later decides that he's going to go back to that town and make right his promise that he had to Saya. And throughout that time, he thought Saya was his girlfriend, you know, that they're devoted for each other and that she's going to feel the exact same way and keep her promise. However, when he goes back to the town, even though he actually never really reached out to talk to her at all during those 10 years, so he decides to go back to his hometown, and there he does actually end up meeting Saya. And it's just like, hey, so I'm here. Do you remember that promise we made 10 years ago about getting married? And she's just like, bro, what the fuck? We made that promise when we were kids. Shut the fuck up. I have a boyfriend now, and it's not you, baby. Very understandably so, she would react that way. Very understandable. So he is heartbroken, but he decides that he can't give up on her. I mean, this is a girl that for the past 10 years he devoted so much of himself to. Never looked away and only thought of her. So one day, Saya and Junpei do hang out with each other, and Saya begins to give him a pity lay because Junpei is still so obsessed with her from just a promise that they made 10 years ago. So they begin with Junpei licking Saya's armpits while Saya is texting her boyfriend saying they're just hanging out, which is kind of NTR. They then bang and it lasts like 20 plus pages. It is so long. And it's just the constant, oh my god, it's so good. My boyfriend's not as good as this. This is so good. Just 20 plus pages. Then Saya goes back to her boyfriend and then she tries to have him. And then she finds out, oh my god, my boyfriend can't satisfy me like Junpei can. What do I do? A tale as old as time. So then she continues to go back to Junpei and still have him while still continuously seeing her boyfriend. Now the art isn't all that refined and is honestly kind of comedic looking, but this one was a pretty good read, okay? There was just like one scene in particular that I loved. It's like when Junpei is giving an oil massage to Saya, and not gonna lie, it's hot stuff. It's good stuff. There's also a scene where Junpei and Saya are doing it in a closet while Saya's boyfriend is outside masturbating to the thought of Saya, not knowing that Saya is cheating with Junpei in a closet right next to him. So there is a good bit of NTR. So one of the jarring things about that scene actually that I don't want to talk about is the boyfriend heard a noise in the closet while they were doing it, opened the closet, and still somehow he just didn't see them. That logic, it astounds me. And I'm gonna say, it's kind of weird to say, but this was a pretty wholesome read. We get to see Junpei, who loves this girl, wants nothing but to be with this girl, win her over, and their relation begins to start. Although she's cheating, but in the end they form a rather like close relationship. Now the art is not the best or most detailed, but it's a damn good read. I highly recommend it. It does suit the tag, and it's just in general a really good read. The next title is called Ara Ara Mamato Seiko. Now, I'm not gonna go into much detail about this one because a lot of the tags in this are really controversial, and personally, it kind of made me uncomfortable. The story is about a mom named Yuki who is a nursery school teacher and has a daughter named Saki. Saki befriends a boy named Misaki and invites him over to her house to play video games. Now we find out Misaki is someone Yuki used to teach during nursery school. And Misaki, who remembers Yuki, confesses his love and confesses that he's always loved her. And Yuki, astounded, decides to kind of accept his feelings, and yes, they do the act. And then it continues, and that's kind of the manga. The husband's on a work trip, so it is just kind of cheating again. There was one instance where the daughter Saki did kind of like nearly walked in on it on the Yuki and Misaki. But also, yeah, once again, it wasn't really NTR. Like the art is kind of detailed, like we do see a little bit of pubes and sweat, but it isn't my favorite. The lining is good, but some of the details, again, are a bit exaggerated. It can be like the tits being suddenly super big when they weren't before, or the ass being just completely massive out of nowhere. And I know some people, like that, but that's just not really for me. It's kind of jarring. For me, it doesn't really deserve the NTR tag, and I just kind of want to leave it at that. I don't really want to talk more about it. The next title is called My Hero Harem. And this is, of course, a doujin from My Hero Academia. And I hate to fucking admit this, but I think a while ago I have already read it. I am not one of you, My Hero Academia TikTok. Don't come for me! Don't think I'm one of you! I'm not sunken so low! So the story is essentially that Mirko is a hero rabbit thing, and rabbits have a thing where they get horny. A lot. So she gets a friend, and we initially see them just kind of going at it. Mirko keeps wearing various costumes, and they keep trying different various, positions, and it kind of goes from there. Then the character Ryukyu joins the team. Now Ryukyu has a boyfriend, but has never had sex, but desires to. So they end up having a threesome. Then later, the character Nejire comes with her friend Kendo and Setsuna, and they're wearing Santa costumes, and then they just begin banging this random guy as well, and they're just banging one another, they're just banging each other all together with just this one dude, and it comes an orgy just with one guy. And it kind of just ends there. Now the line art is a bit messy, but Jesus Christ, the art is so good that when I was reading through it, I kept thinking is this like the original art? Because it looks exactly like it. The coloring on some of the pages is so gorgeous to look at. And although the bodies are not really all that detailed, Jesus Christ, the expressions and progressions still so fucking good. It's so good. Sadly, again, the only NTR aspect was when her friend Ryukyu mentions that she has a boyfriend but still wants to have sex. To me, again, that's cheating, just kind of adultery. So it doesn't really suit the NTR aspect, but this was a super good read. Very good. Now the next title is called Echi na Garu JK to Amayadori Suide ni uaki kobi shichau yatsu. Me. Now this one is another multi-work, but I think this is the first one that the first chapter is the highest rate out of all the other chapters. And right away when I saw the cover art, I loved the art already. I was already hooked line and sinker in that one. Now the story begins with a guy named Mitsumori who sees his female classmate Misaki out in the rain without an umbrella. Misaki, known as a girl who likes to sleep around, is sitting in the rain while kind of showing her panties, and her shirt is really wet so you can see through it and see her bra. So Mitsumori sees that and thinks, I should probably help her out and get her dried off so she can get home comfortably. Once they get to Mitsumori's house, Misaki notices that Mitsumori has a hard-on and is like, hey, you really helped me out. Let me return the favor by showing how grateful I am. So they begin to go at it, and then we find out Mitsumori actually has a girlfriend, but they still decide to just keep going at it. And one of the unexpected things I liked the most about this guy was the banter between the two characters. Mitsumori was pretty lightly mean to Misaki, which it adds a lot of character. And Misaki wouldn't take it lying down. She would be firing back at him, being sassy as well. I'd find myself laughing over like their mini arguments. Like Misaki would be like, okay, yeah, say hi to your girlfriend for me. And then Mitsumori would be like, literally just kind of fucking die for me, please. I also really like the NTR aspect to this because one of the scenes where Mitsumori's having sex with Misaki, Mitsumori's girlfriend ends up calling him and even fucking FaceTimes him, and she is still none the wiser. She doesn't even notice. Like, I don't even know how. And at the end of the manga, actually, his girlfriend notices that Misaki's leaving Mitsumori's house, and it just ends with her saying, who the fuck was that? Who the fuck was that? This one was definitely one of my favorite. No, I actually think it is my favorite out of the entire list. I highly recommend reading this. It fits the tag, and it's just all together. It's just gorgeous. 10 out of 10, baby. The next one is called Gyaru and the Disgusting Otaku. Now, I don't know why I love the dynamic of gyarus and otakus going at it, but I am very partial to it. I adore it. In fact, I adore it so much that I've actually read this one quite a few times. And I already know this by heart. Okay, I'm gonna close my notes because I don't even need him to talk about this bad boy. Story begins with a girl named Nanase who has a boyfriend but doesn't really like having sex with him. One day after school, she is assigned to stay after school to clean up the classroom with another classmate called Nozaki, who's an otaku. Nanase really hates Nozaki because he's constantly always ogling her, and she can see that. When they are alone after school doing their cleaning, she decides to tease Nozaki by pulling his pants down, but then by pulling his pants down, accidentally pulls his underwear down and sees that he's got a pretty big little pee-pee man. There we go. So she decides to do it with him. She realizes she actually really does love sex and is just kind of obsessed with his pee-pee after that. After one time, she decides that they need to meet again in the classroom so they can do it again. So they begin doing it again in the classroom the next day. However, Nanase's boyfriend, starts to enter the classroom, so they need to hide. So her and Nozaki decide to hide in the nearest locker, and they decide to just keep going at it inside the locker while Nanase's boyfriend is outside, the locker talking with his friends. So NTR. Now, I really love this one for a variety of reasons. I really love Gyaru times Otaku, but I also really love the story to this as well as the art. Now, the story is kind of wholesome because they actually start to fall in love with one another. Nozaki begins to actually take care and notice Nanase and, figure out her needs and as well as be more open and honest with her. And in turn from that, Nanase begins to realize she has feelings for Nozaki and becomes all tsundere, which, a woman after my own heart, love that shit. He, in the end, is just happy that she's even looking his way, and she starts to feel something special towards him. The art is incredibly detailed, be it with the veins and the pee-pee, as well as just the detail on the cooch as well. As the faces during it are not overly done, but are clearly in ecstasy, and it captures so well how, what it could feel like to, start doing stuff with the person you love. And it's just seeing them form and then seeing it kind of done with the art when they're having sex. It's just, and the juices are just perfection as well. I don't even know the juices. How could they be so good? She also has a small thing where she has a mole on her face and her eyes are just so pretty. I don't know, man. I love it. It is one I highly recommend, and it's perfect. Love it. Deserves to be there. Deserves every bit. It's perfect. I know the previous one I said is probably my favorite. It's hard between these two, really. And then finally, on to the last title. And this one is called Yan Mama Ogaki no Sugata ni Nate Fukushu NTR. And this one has probably a lot more controversial tags compared to the other one, so I'm gonna be probably a lot more vague with this one as well. Now, the story begins with an obese man living in an apartment, and his name is Ichiro. One day, a mother who lives in the apartment complex with her child goes to Ichiro's house, knocks at his door, and says that her child said that Ichiro hit him, and she is gonna call the cops. Now, Ichiro didn't hit this kid. The kid just kind of lied because he wanted to harass Ichiro and just to kind of piss him off. And after the mom leaves, Ichiro gets kicked out of the apartment, not for this, but because he hasn't been paying his rent and, you know, he can't really afford to, so he doesn't really know what to do now. Suddenly, he is hit by lightning and then is transformed into a kid. The mother from before notices Ichiro as a child and sees that he's alone in the middle of nowhere and that he probably needs help. She decides to let Ichiro stay in her house, and from then, Ichiro, who still has his adult mind, although he's in a kid's body, begins to want to take revenge for the rudeness of the mother from before, and the acts do begin. Now, we do hear again that the husband of the mother who, you know, is with Ichiro, does work overseas. But again, yeah, it's just cheating and adultery. However, during one scene, the son in the beginning sees his mother and Ichiro going at it, which, you know, is another whole bucket of trauma. But this was truly a weird one. Just kind of gonna leave it at that. The art to this has more of a webtoon kind of feel and is fully drawn, you know, completely, you know, colored and everything. But this one, it just wasn't my favorite. It just, you know, it had a lot of weird aspects to it that I just personally wouldn't, you know, go out of my way to find. It does have an NTR aspect to it, but once again, you know, it's kind of the sun. Does that really count? I guess there's an argument to be made there, and I don't really, once again, find that she has a husband and she mentions that he's working overseas to really be counting. So though I don't really recommend this one. I don't think it deserves to be where it is, but you know, that's just could be just me. Either way, thank you guys for watching this video. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you are thinking about supporting this channel, or once again would like to see this video uncensored, then please check out my Patreon link, which is in the description, or type in patreon.com/Sydsnap. I had to do so much research in this one. I have been talking nonstop for over an hour now. Which is, you know, raw footage. You know, this is going to be over the hour, but it'll be a long one. I'm going to be doing more of these in the future, the tag ones. If there's any tags that you guys want me to do or recommend that I look through, you know, to do for another video like this, then please let me know. Either way, thank you guys again, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios! Bye!